He offered her an umbrella in the rain, a simple act of kindness that would unravel the carefully constructed walls around both their hearts, proving that sometimes the most valuable things in life can't be bought, only given freely. The rain fell like liquid silver that November evening, transforming London's streets into a canvas of reflected neon and possibility. The kind of rain that didn't just fall, it performed, drumming against pavement with the rhythm of 1,000 impatient fingers, turning the city into a symphony of water and light. Marcus Chen stood beneath the flickering awning of Tech Fix Solutions, his modest repair shop in Shoreditch, watching the downpour with the resignation of someone who'd forgotten his better umbrella at home. Again. At 24, he developed a particular talent for small acts of forgetfulness, misplaced keys, forgotten lunch, the occasional missed bus, but never had these minor failures felt particularly catastrophic. Life, as his late grandmother used to say, had a way of working itself out. Tonight, however, would test that philosophy in ways he couldn't possibly imagine. He locked the shop's glass door, the metallic click barely audible over the rain's percussion. His fingers still smelled faintly of circuit boards and thermal paste, the perfume of his profession. Inside his backpack, the repair cave flyers crinkled against his laptop, reminding him of tomorrow's community event. Marcus believed in fixing things, computers, relationships, the general chaos of existence. His grandmother had taught him that kindness was the ultimate repair tool, capable of mending what logic couldn't touch. The street stretched before him like a wet painting, all blurred edges and running colors. Shoreditch had transformed over the years from industrial wasteland to hipster paradise, though Marcus remembered when the biggest excitement had been the opening of a proper chippy. Now, boutique coffee shops nested next to vintage clothing stores, their windows glowing with the warm promise of overpriced lattes and artisanal baked goods. He pulled out his umbrella, a battered green thing with a wooden duck head handle that had belonged to his grandmother. Papa had carried it through 40 years of British weather, and it showed. The fabric had faded to the color of old moss, and one of the spokes had a stubborn bend that gave it a slightly lopsided appearance. But it worked, and more importantly, it carried memories of Sunday afternoon walks and her particular brand of no-nonsense wisdom. "Achin," she'd said in Cantonese during one of their last conversations, her hospital bed seeming to swallow her small frame, "remember, kindness is never wasted. Even when it seems like throwing water into the ocean, you're still adding something pure." Marcus adjusted his hood and stepped into the rain, the umbrella springing open with a reluctant wheeze. He'd taken maybe 5 steps when he saw her. She was crouched against the glass facade of Lumiere Boutique, one of those aggressively expensive clothing stores where a single blouse cost more than Marcus's monthly rent. Her knees were drawn to her chest, designer jeans darkened by rain, and she was staring at her phone with the kind of desperation usually reserved for lottery tickets and exam results. Any sensible Londoner would have walked past. The city had taught its residents that involving yourself in strangers' problems was like opening Pandora's box, except instead of hope at the bottom, you'd find disappointment and possibly a lawsuit. London's unspoken rule was simple: mind your business, keep moving, don't make eye contact. But Marcus had never been particularly sensible, a trait his ex-girlfriend, Jennifer, had mentioned approximately 47 times during their 6-month relationship before deciding to date someone with more ambition and less misplaced optimism. "You all right there?" he called out, his northern accent, courtesy of his Manchester-born mother, cutting through the rain's steady percussion. The girl looked up, and Marcus felt the moment crystallize, becoming one of those memories that would later feel both inevitable and impossible. Her eyes were stone gray, holding equal parts vulnerability and defiance, like someone who'd learned to expect the worst but hadn't quite given up on hoping for better. She couldn't have been more than 21, wearing designer clothes that now clung to her like expensive regret, a cream-colored silk blouse that had probably cost more than Marcus's entire wardrobe, now translucent and ruined. Her hair, a rich auburn that might have been professionally styled hours ago, now hung in wet ropes around a face that belonged in a magazine spread about effortless beauty, which Marcus had learned from Jennifer always required enormous effort. But it was her expression that stopped him, that particular mixture of pride and desperation, the look of someone who'd just realized that all their careful planning had amounted to nothing. "I'm fine," she lied, unconvincingly, her voice carrying the crisp accent of private schools and inherited wealth. Marcus glanced at the phone in her hands, an iPhone, top model, currently displaying the black screen of the truly and completely dead. The kind of dead that no amount of button pressing would resurrect. He'd seen that look before, on hundreds of devices in his shop. Terminal battery death, probably exacerbated by the cold and wet. "Right," he said, keeping his voice neutral. "And I'm the King of England. We're both having a banner evening, aren't we?" Despite herself, a ghost of a smile touched her lips, there and gone like a fish breaking the surface of dark water. Up close, Marcus could see she was shivering, her arms wrapped around herself in a futile attempt at warmth. Her shoes, delicate things that probably classified as flats but looked entirely unsuitable for actual walking, were soaked through. Without overthinking it, overthinking being the enemy of good deeds, according to Papa, Marcus crouched down beside her and extended the umbrella over both their heads. The duck-head handle caught the light from the boutique window, its painted eyes seeming almost judgmental. "Look," he said, "I'm not trying to be a hero or anything. That ship sailed when I realized I'm deathly afraid of heights and can't throw a proper punch. But my nan would literally haunt me if I left someone sitting in the rain. And trust me, you don't want to be haunted by a Chinese grandmother. They're persistent. They'll reorganize your kitchen cabinets from beyond the grave." The girl stared at him for a long moment, conducting some kind of internal risk assessment that would have made MI6 proud. Her eyes moved from his face to the umbrella to his backpack, probably calculating the odds that he was A, a serial killer, B, after her money, if she had any, or C, genuinely just a weird good Samaritan with a duck umbrella. "My phone died," she finally admitted, holding up the deceased device like evidence in court. "And my ride isn't coming." There was something in the way she said ride that suggested it wasn't just an Uber she was missing. Marcus had spent enough time people watching in London to recognize when someone was editing their story on the fly, carefully removing inconvenient truths. "Right. Well, there's a café around the corner," Marcus said, standing and offering his hand. The rain had intensified, turning from persistent to aggressive, the kind of downpour that suggested the sky had taken something personally. "Still open, surprisingly good coffee considering they charge like they're selling liquid gold, and they've got phone chargers." "My treat." The girl looked at his extended hand like it was a puzzle she needed to solve. Her own hands were delicate, with perfectly manicured nails painted a subtle shade of pink that probably had some pretentious name like Whisper of Dawn or Existential Crisis. "I'm Marcus, by the way," he added, keeping his hand outstretched. Marcus Chen. And before you worry, I'm aggressively normal. My hobbies include fixing computers, disappointing my mother by not being a doctor, and apparently, rescuing soaked strangers from boutique storefronts. I also have an embarrassing teenage poetry blog that I pray daily no one ever finds. That earned him another almost smile, slightly more substantial than the first. She was studying him with an intensity that felt like being X-rayed, seeing past his cheap rain jacket and charity shop jeans to something deeper. Perhaps because hypothermia seemed worse than potential danger, or perhaps because something in his ridiculous honesty felt safer than the alternatives, she took his hand. Her grip was firmer than he expected, her palm cold but steady. As she stood, Marcus noticed she was taller than he'd thought, maybe 5'8" in her ruined expensive shoes, and carried herself with the kind of posture that spoke of ballet lessons and finishing schools. "Olivia," she said simply, as if testing whether the name still fit. Just Olivia, no last name, offered like a gift with conditions attached. Would you step out of your comfort zone to help a stranger in the rain, even if it meant risking your own convenience? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear about a time kindness surprised you. The cafe was one of those aggressively hipster establishments where the menu was written in chalk and the baristas had beards that could shelter small birds. The Grounded Bean proclaimed its hand-painted sign, surrounded by illustrations of coffee cherries that suggested the owner had taken an online botanical illustration course and wanted everyone to know about it. Marcus pushed open the door, releasing a wave of warm air that smelled of roasted beans and wet wool, the universal scent of London establishments during rain season. The interior glowed with Edison bulbs dangling from exposed brick, their warm light reflecting off mismatched vintage furniture that probably cost more than matching modern pieces would have. Only 3 other customers occupied the space. A young woman typing furiously on a laptop, headphones blocking out the world, an elderly man reading a newspaper with the deliberate slowness of someone with nowhere else to be, and a couple in the corner having what appeared to be either a very intense conversation or a very quiet argument. "2 coffees, please," Marcus said to the barista, a man with a top knot and the kind of elaborate arm tattoos that probably told a story Marcus didn't have time to decode. "Whatever's good and hot. And do you still have that basket of phone chargers behind the counter?" The barista nodded, already reaching for the espresso machine with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd made 10,000 identical drinks. "Lightning or USB-C?" "Lightning," Olivia said quietly, her first words since they'd left the rain behind. Marcus paid £8.50 for 2 coffees, which seemed like theft but was apparently the going rate for beverages in Shoreditch, and guided Olivia to a table near the window. She sank into the chair with the careful movements of someone trying not to acknowledge how thoroughly exhausted they were. Up close, in the cafe's warm light, Marcus could see more details. There was a small scar near her left eyebrow, barely visible. Her ears held small diamond studs that caught the light, real diamonds, probably, not the cubic zirconia variety Marcus's budget understood. And her hands, now wrapped around the coffee mug the barista delivered, trembled slightly. Not from the cold. From something deeper. She plugged in her phone with the urgency of a surgeon connecting life support, watching the screen with an intensity that suggested the device held more than just contacts and social media. When it finally flickered to life, her whole body tensed. The notifications came like a tsunami. The phone buzzed continuously for a solid 15 seconds, a digital avalanche of missed calls, texts, and alerts that made the table vibrate. Marcus caught glimpses of the contact names flashing across the screen: father's office, security team, PR manager James, driver, do not ignore. Odd contacts for a 21-year-old, but then again, London was full of odd people. Maybe she worked in entertainment, or politics, or one of those mysterious industries where everyone seemed to have a team. Olivia quickly silenced the phone, but her expression had transformed. The vulnerability from moments ago had been replaced by something harder, more guarded. She stared at the screen like it was a coiled snake. Popular evening, Marcus observed, sipping his coffee, which was, annoyingly, actually quite good. Something like that. She took a long drink, then seemed to remember basic social conventions. Thank you. For this. For everything. Don't mention it. Well, you can mention it. Just don't, take out a billboard or anything. Local man does minimum decent thing isn't much of a headline. That earned him a real smile this time, brief but genuine. You'd be surprised how rare the minimum decent thing is. Fair point. Though in my defense, the bar's been set pretty low. If not actively setting things on fire counts as an achievement, we're all doing great. She laughed, actually laughed, and something in her shoulders relaxed. Outside, the rain continued its assault on London, turning the window into a canvas of running water and distorted light. Inside, the café felt like a pocket universe, temporarily separate from whatever chaos waited beyond its walls. So, Marcus said, settling into his chair, do I get the story, or are we doing the British thing where we discuss weather patterns and pretend this is totally normal? Olivia wrapped her hands around the coffee mug, staring into its depths like they held answers. Have you ever wanted to just disappear? She asked finally. Completely start over as someone else? Every Monday morning, Marcus replied. Though I suspect you mean something more dramatic than my general dread of inventory spreadsheets. I had a fight with my father, she admitted, the words coming slowly, like pulling thread from a tightly wound spool. Said some things. He said some things back. Very dramatic. Very stupid of me. I ended up walking out and just kept walking. Didn't think about where I was going or how I'd get back. Sounds liberating, actually, Marcus said. I once tried to run away when I was 8. Made it to the end of the street before I realized I'd forgotten my Game Boy. I had to go back. Very anticlimactic rebellion. What did your parents do? Mom made me a sandwich and asked if I wanted to run away after dinner instead. Marcus smiled at the memory, his mother's practical approach to his childhood drama. Said if I was going to be dramatic, at least I should be well-fed and dramatic. Parents, They're either insufferable or irreplaceable. Sometimes both simultaneously. Olivia's expression flickered with something Marcus couldn't quite name, longing, perhaps, or regret. My father doesn't really understand things. He does the my way or the highway thing very well, though. Years of practice. Controlling type? That's putting it mildly. She took another sip of coffee, and Marcus noticed her hands had steadied. He has this vision for my life. Every step planned, every decision already made. university, career, even who I should. She stopped abruptly, as if she'd been about to reveal more than intended. Who you should date? Marcus supplied, because he'd seen enough rom-coms to recognize the setup. Among other things. Her phone buzzed again, and she glanced at it with visible reluctance. The screen showed, Father 47 missed calls. 47. Marcus tried to imagine caring enough about anything to call 47 times. Even when his favorite curry place got his order wrong, he'd only called twice, and the second time was just to apologize for being annoying the first time. That's persistent, he said carefully. That's Malcolm Thompson, she replied, then immediately looked like she regretted saying the name. Malcolm Thompson. The name tickled something in Marcus's memory, something he'd seen in passing, maybe on the news or in one of those business magazines that sometimes ended up in the shop's waiting area. But he couldn't quite place it. Well, Marcus said, because the weight of whatever Olivia was carrying seemed too heavy for a rainy Tuesday evening. Speaking as someone whose greatest life accomplishment is successfully keeping a cactus alive for 3 years, I'm probably not qualified to give advice about complicated family dynamics. But for what it's worth, sometimes the highway isn't such a bad option. At least temporarily. Olivia looked at him then, really looked at him, and Marcus saw something shift in her expression. A decision being made, or perhaps a door being carefully opened. Can I ask you something strange? Stranger than this entire evening? Do you believe people can be good just because? Without wanting something in return? The question hung in the air between them, more serious than anything that had come before. Marcus thought about his grandmother, about her philosophy of kindness as its own reward, about the umbrella he still carried because it represented something larger than just staying dry. Yeah, he said simply. I do. Olivia stared at Marcus for a long moment, as if his answer had confirmed something important, a theory she'd been testing, a hypothesis about humanity that she'd nearly given up on. Then her phone erupted again, this time with a call that made the entire table vibrate. Father's office blazed across the screen in bold letters. She declined it without hesitation, and Marcus watched something rebellious and almost reckless flash across her face. It was the expression of someone who just stepped off a cliff and decided to enjoy the fall. Can I see you again? She asked, surprising them both with the directness of it. Marcus blinked, his coffee cup frozen halfway to his mouth. Like, intentionally? Not just coincidentally being caught in more weather-related emergencies? Intentionally. Very intentionally. Her stone gray eyes held his, and Marcus felt the ground shift beneath him in a way that had nothing to do with London's unpredictable infrastructure. I mean, yeah. Sure. Absolutely. He was aware he sounded like an idiot, words tumbling out without proper coordination. I should probably mention that my idea of a good time involves vintage computer restoration and arguing about whether Star Trek or Star Wars has better philosophical implications, so if you're expecting sophisticated dinner conversation about, I don't know, wine regions or stock portfolios, you might be disappointed. That sounds perfect, Olivia said, and meant it. They exchanged numbers, Olivia carefully typing his contact information into her phone under the name Marcus, umbrella with a duck emoji, which made him laugh. As she stood to leave, she paused, her hand resting on the table. Thank you, she said again, but this time the words carried more weight. Foreseeing me. Just me. Before Marcus could ask what she meant by that, she was gone, disappearing into the London night with her designer clothes and her 47 missed calls, leaving him with a cooling coffee and the strangest feeling that his life had just auditioned for a role in someone else's story without knowing any of the lines. 3 days later, Olivia texted him, "Free Saturday? Promise no dramatic rain scenes. Might involve pigeons though." They met at the South Bank, where street performers competed with the Thames for attention and tourists photographed everything with the enthusiasm of people determined to prove they'd been somewhere. Olivia arrived wearing jeans, actual, normal jeans, and a simple black jacket that probably still cost more than Marcus's monthly rent but at least didn't scream "I'm compensating for something with fashion." "So," Marcus said, falling into step beside her, "on a scale of 1 to my father has deployed a search team, how much trouble are you in for the other night?" "Somewhere around hired a private investigator to track my phone's GPS history," Olivia replied casually, as if this were a perfectly normal parental response. Marcus stopped walking. "I'm sorry, what?" "I'm joking. Mostly." She smiled at his expression. "He's just protective. And controlling. And believes that his way is the only way because it's worked for him, therefore it must work for everyone else. Very logical, except for the part where it completely ignores that I'm a separate human being with my own thoughts." They walked in silence for a moment, navigating around a mime who seemed to be trapped in an invisible box of his own creation, which Marcus felt was perhaps too on the nose as a metaphor for Olivia's life. "What does he want you to do?" Marcus asked. "Your father, I mean." "Everything." Olivia's laugh was hollow. "Finish my business degree at Imperial. Join the family company in a carefully orchestrated role designed to look important but have no actual power. Marry someone appropriate, which apparently means someone with the right last name, the right connections, the right portfolio. Produce heirs. Smile for cameras. Exist as an extension of the Thompson legacy rather than as, Olivia." There it was again. Thompson. Marcus made a mental note to actually Google that name when he got home, because clearly it meant something he was missing. "That sounds exhausting," he said instead. "It is. It's like..." She paused, watching a pigeon attempt to steal a tourist's sandwich with admirable boldness. "It's like being given the most beautiful, expensive cage in the world and being told you should be grateful for it. And maybe you should be grateful, because the cage really is beautiful, and most people would kill for it. But you're still trapped." Marcus considered this. "I think that pigeon just committed highway robbery. Should we report it?" Olivia burst out laughing, a real, unguarded sound that made several people turn to look. "See, this is what I mean. You don't treat me like I'm made of glass or money. You just talk to me like I'm normal. You are normal. Well, relatively. Your normal includes private investigators and family legacies, and my normal includes arguing with customers about whether turning it off and on again constitutes real tech support, but fundamentally, we're all just trying not to mess up too badly." They continued walking, the conversation flowing easier now. Olivia told him about her degree, business economics, chosen by her father, tolerated by her. Marcus told her about his shop, about the satisfaction of bringing dead technology back to life, about his dream of maybe expanding into teaching basic repair skills to kids who couldn't afford new devices. "That's actually beautiful," Olivia said. "The teaching thing, I mean. It's like giving people power over their own stuff instead of making them dependent on experts." "Exactly. Though I think the real reason I want to do it is because I'm fundamentally a nerd who enjoys sharing useless knowledge about circuit boards. It's not useless if it helps people." They stopped at a railing overlooking the Thames, watching the water flow past with its cargo of reflected lights and old secrets. The London Eye rotated slowly in the distance, each capsule holding its own collection of tourists and dreams and possibly motion sickness. "Can I tell you something?" Olivia said quietly. "And you have to promise not to laugh." "I promise to try not to laugh. My face has limited control settings." She smiled despite herself. "When I was little, before my mother died, she used to tell me that the best things in life can't be bought. My father hated when she said that. He'd built his entire empire on the opposite philosophy. But she'd say it anyway, especially to me. 'Olivia,' she'd say, 'remember that kindness, creativity, love, these things exist outside of transactions.' I think that's why he got so controlling after she died. Like he was trying to prove her wrong, or maybe trying to protect me from believing in things that couldn't be quantified." Marcus felt the weight of that confession, the trust it represented. "For what it's worth," he said carefully, "I think your mom was right. The umbrella thing? That wasn't a transaction. Neither is this." "I know." Olivia turned to face him fully. "That's exactly why I wanted to see you again." Her phone buzzed, inevitably, but this time she just silenced it without even looking. A small rebellion, perhaps, but revolutions had started with less. "So," Marcus said, "what's the pigeon situation you mentioned?" "Because I was promised pigeons, and so far I've only seen one committing petty larceny." "Come on," Olivia said, grabbing his hand with sudden spontaneity. "There's a place near Westminster Bridge where they gather. We can judge their criminal tendencies together." As they walked, hand in hand through the London afternoon, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that he was standing at the edge of something vast, a story whose ending he couldn't see but whose beginning felt inevitable. Behind them, unnoticed, a man in a dark suit made a phone call, his camera capturing their linked hands with professional efficiency. The pigeons near Westminster Bridge turned out to have, according to Marcus's detailed analysis, absolutely criminal levels of entitlement and zero respect for personal space. Olivia had laughed so hard she'd gotten a stitch in her side, which Marcus considered a significant achievement. What followed over the next 2 months was the most unlikely romance London had ever quietly witnessed. They fell into an easy rhythm, coffee dates that stretched into afternoon walks, late-night phone calls about everything and nothing, stolen moments between Olivia's classes and Marcus's work shifts. Olivia kept her last name to herself. Not out of deliberate deception, but because every time she was about to say it, the moment felt too perfect to contaminate with the weight of expectations and Google searches and the inevitable shift in how people looked at her once they knew. Marcus, blissfully unaware, remained too busy falling in love to notice the gaps in her story. She worked in family business consulting, vague enough to be meaningless, specific enough to stop questions. Her father was in tech, technically true, in the way that saying the ocean is damp is technically true. They ate takeaway in Marcus's cramped flat above a Vietnamese restaurant, where the smell of pho perpetually seeped through the floorboards. Olivia seemed fascinated by everything: his grandmother's photographs on the wall, his collection of broken electronics waiting for resurrection, his modest bookshelves crammed with science fiction and repair manuals. "This is amazing," she said one evening, sitting cross-legged on his worn sofa, examining a circuit board he'd been explaining. Her fingers traced the pathways carefully, following his earlier instruction. "It's a motherboard from a 2015 MacBook," Marcus said. "Not exactly the Sistine Chapel." "No, I mean this. This space. It's so real." She gestured around the flat, at the mismatched furniture, the kitchen where the cabinets didn't quite close properly, the bathroom door that was stuck in humid weather. "Everything here has a story. That mug is chipped because you dropped it making tea at 3 a.m. during a repair emergency. That blanket was your grandmother's. The bookshelf is from a charity shop, and you spent an entire Saturday reinforcing it because the previous owner had installed it backwards. You've been paying attention." "Of course I have." She looked at him with an intensity that made his chest tight. "Do you know how rare this is? Space where things exist because they're useful or meaningful, not because they project the right image." Marcus sat beside her, close enough that their knees touched. "You know, for someone in business consulting, you have some pretty strong opinions about materialism." Olivia's smile faltered for just a moment. "Let's just say I've seen what happens when everything becomes a transaction. It's not pretty." They learned each other's languages over those weeks. Olivia taught Marcus about art history and classical music, subjects he'd always found intimidating but that came alive when she explained them. Marcus taught her to repair simple electronics, watching her face light up when she successfully replaced a phone screen for the first time. "I did that," she exclaimed, holding up the functioning device like a trophy. "It actually works. You're a natural. Give it a few months and you'll be putting me out of business." "Never. You'd just pivot to teaching full-time. That dream school for kids, remember?" The fact that she remembered his half-formed dream, mentioned once during a drowsy conversation at 2 a.m., made something in Marcus's chest expand dangerously. One evening in late January, they were walking back from a pub quiz. They'd come in fifth, mostly due to Marcus's shocking ignorance of celebrity gossip and Olivia's suspicious knowledge of 90s boy bands, when Olivia stopped abruptly on the pavement. "What?" Marcus asked, concerned. "Did you step on something?" "I want to marry you," she said, completely out of nowhere, her breath misting in the cold air. Marcus nearly choked on nothing. "That's quite forward. We haven't even discussed our views on dishwasher loading techniques, which I'm told is crucial for long-term compatibility." "I'm serious, Marcus." She grabbed both his hands, her gray eyes reflecting the street lamp's amber glow. "You're the first person who's ever seen me as just me. Not a prize to be won, not a connection to be exploited, not a headline waiting to happen. Just Olivia." "Well, when you put it that way," Marcus said, his heart hammering so hard he was certain she could hear it, "how can I refuse? Though I should warn you, my mother will absolutely lose her mind. She's been planning my hypothetical wedding since I was 12, and I don't think any of her plans involve me meeting someone who can quote both Shakespeare and Star Trek." Olivia kissed him then, right there on the pavement outside a closed newsagent, and Marcus felt the world narrow to just this, her cold hands in his, the taste of the cider she'd been drinking, the certainty that this was either the best decision he'd ever make or the most catastrophic. Possibly both. "I need to tell you something," Olivia said, pulling back but keeping her hands in his. "About my family. About who I..." Her phone rang. Not just rang, erupted with the specific tone she designated for one contact. Her face paled. "I have to take this," she said, and the apology in her voice was almost physical. "I'm sorry, Go," Marcus said, because he could see the panic in her eyes. She answered, turning slightly away. Marcus couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but he watched Olivia's posture change, shoulders straightening, chin lifting, her voice taking on a formal quality he'd never heard before. "Yes, Father. I understand. Tomorrow at 9. Yes. I'll be there." When she turned back, the woman who'd just proposed to him had been replaced by someone else, someone more guarded, more careful. "I have to go," she said. "Family thing. I'll explain everything tomorrow, I promise. Everything." She kissed him once more, quick and desperate, and then she was gone, climbing into a black car that had appeared as if summoned. Not an Uber. Something else. Something with a driver who opened the door for her and called her Miss Thompson. Marcus stood on the pavement, his grandmother's umbrella in one hand and a head full of questions, watching the car disappear into London's maze of streets. Miss Thompson. As soon as he got home, he did what he should have done 2 months ago. He Googled Thompson Family Business London. The search results loaded, and Marcus's stomach dropped through the floor. The screen glowed in the darkness of Marcus's flat, each search result a small detonation in his understanding of reality. Malcolm Thompson, tech mogul, named Britain's 8th richest person. Thompson Technologies reports record £4.2 billion revenue. Olivia Thompson, heiress to tech empire, spotted at charity gala. And there she was. His Olivia. Except not his Olivia at all, but someone else entirely, or perhaps the same person wearing a different skin. In the photographs, she stood beside a severe-looking man in his 60s, her smile perfect and empty, wearing a gown that probably cost more than Marcus earned in a year. Her hair was styled in an elaborate updo, her posture impeccable, everything about her screaming untouchable. Malcolm Thompson. Malcolm Thompson. The man who'd built Thompson Technologies from a single software patent into an empire spanning cloud computing, artificial intelligence, and half the tech infrastructure in Europe. The man whose picture graced the covers of Forbes and The Economist with the regularity of a subscription service. And Olivia was his daughter. His only child, according to the articles. Heir to billions. The girl who'd sat on his threadbare sofa learning to repair circuit boards was worth more money than Marcus could conceptually understand. He scrolled through article after article, each one adding weight to the growing knot in his stomach. Malcolm Thompson's daughter to join company board after graduation. Olivia Thompson linked to banking heir Sebastian Hartley. That last one included photos from some charity event, Olivia in emerald green, standing next to a man who looked like he'd been genetically engineered to appear in cologne advertisements. The article described them as close family friends with expected future announcements. Marcus's phone buzzed. A text from Olivia. I'm so sorry about tonight. Tomorrow, I promise. I'll explain everything. Please don't hate me. He stared at the message for a long time before typing back, I could never hate you. But we definitely need to talk. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, I know. I should have told you from the beginning. I was just scared that if you knew, you'd see me differently. Like everyone else does. Marcus understood then, the careful evasions, the vague job description, the way she'd seemed fascinated by the ordinariness of his life. She hadn't been slumming or playing in poverty. She'd been escaping. I don't care about the money, he typed. I care that you didn't trust me with the truth. I trust you more than anyone. That's the terrifying part. They met the next day at the same café where it had all begun, the Grounded Bean, with its pretentious chalk menus and Edison bulbs. Olivia arrived early, sitting at their usual table, her fingers wrapped around a coffee that had clearly gone cold. She looked up when Marcus entered, and the vulnerability in her expression made his prepared speech evaporate. I'm sorry, she said before he could sit down. I should have told you. Week 1, day 1, the moment I realized this was becoming something real. You were scared, Marcus finished, sitting across from her. I get it. I spent half the night reading about your family. Your father's terrifying, by the way. There's an article about how he once fired an entire department via conference call because someone missed a deadline. That's actually true, Olivia admitted. He believes efficiency requires ruthlessness. Sentiment is weakness. Emotions are variables to be controlled or eliminated. He sounds delightful. I'm sure our wedding will be a blast. Olivia's head snapped up. You still want to? Want what? Marry a billionaire heiress whose father could probably have me disappeared with a single phone call. It's not exactly the retirement plan I had in mind, but I'm adaptable. A laugh burst from Olivia, half relief, half disbelief. You're insane. You know that, right? Any normal person would run screaming. I'm very aware of my questionable judgment. It's one of my defining characteristics. Marcus reached across the table, taking her hand. But here's the thing, you're still you. You're still the woman who laughed so hard at my pigeon commentary that you got a stitch. Still the person who spent 3 hours learning to replace a screen because you wanted to understand how things worked. The money doesn't change that. It changes everything, Olivia said quietly. It always does. People look at me and see opportunities, not a person. They calculate worth in connections in portfolios, not in late-night conversations about Doctor Who. Then they're idiots. My father thinks you're an idiot. Or worse, a gold digger with an elaborate long con. Marcus blinked. I'm sorry, your father knows about me? He knows about everyone. The private investigator I joked about? Not entirely a joke. He had you researched within 24 hours of our first date. Brilliant. So he knows about the poetry blog. He knows everything. Your credit score, your employment history, probably your browser history if I'm being honest. Well, that's mortifying. Marcus processed this information, the invasiveness of it settling like cold water in his stomach. And what did he conclude from his investigation into my thrilling life? That you're exactly what you appear to be, a moderately successful tech repair worker with no notable debts, no criminal record, no powerful connections, and no apparent reason to be dating his daughter except that you want to. And that's bad? To him? Incomprehensible. In his world, everything is a transaction. People don't do things without calculating the return on investment. The idea that you might just genuinely like me, it doesn't compute. So what happens now? Marcus asked. Does he forbid you from seeing me? Deploy a tactical response team to ensure my compliance? Olivia's expression shifted, becoming something harder, more determined. I told him I want to marry you. The café seemed to quiet, though rationally Marcus knew the other customers were still chattering away. You told him. Your father. Malcolm Thompson. That you want to marry me. A guy who owns exactly one suit from a charity shop. 2 suits, technically. You bought that second one for your cousin's wedding. Olivia. I know. She squeezed his hand. It went about as well as you'd imagine. There was shouting. Threats. A very detailed explanation of everything I'd be throwing away. An offer to set you up with a job at his company, which was insulting to both of us. And finally, an ultimatum, him or you. Marcus felt his chest constrict. And you chose. You, obviously. I chose you. She said it like it was the simplest thing in the world, despite the complexity thundering beneath. I told him I'd give up everything, the trust fund, the company position, the Thompson name if necessary, to build something real with someone who sees me as Olivia, not as an asset to be managed. Jesus. What did he say? He's demanded to meet you. One dinner. One chance to, quote, expose this farce for what it is. Marcus leaned back, processing the magnitude of what she just described. Your father wants to meet me. To expose our relationship as a farce. Yes. And you said yes to this dinner? I said yes. You're absolutely certain about this? About us? Because I need you to understand, I can't give you anything close to what you already have. I can offer you takeaway dinners in a flat that smells like pho. That's it. Olivia smiled then, soft and genuine and entirely hers. That's everything. The Thompson estate was located in Hampstead, which Marcus learned was London's way of saying if you have to ask about property prices, you can't afford to breathe the air. Olivia had given him the address with visible reluctance, as if the numbers themselves might scare him away. It's just a house, she'd said, unconvincingly. Marcus had looked it up on Google Maps. It wasn't just a house. It was a Georgian mansion behind iron gates, with manicured grounds that probably required a full-time staff and the kind of circular driveway usually reserved for hotels. Right, he'd said. Just a house. Like Buckingham Palace is just a flat. The dinner was scheduled for Saturday evening, formal attire required, which meant Marcus needed to upgrade from his charity shop suits. He couldn't afford much, but pride demanded he at least look like he'd tried. He ended up at a discount formal wear shop in Stratford, where a patient saleswoman named Rita helped him find a navy suit that fit reasonably well and didn't scream, "I bought this in desperation." "Hot date?" Rita asked while hemming the trousers. "Meeting the girlfriend's father." "Ah. The important one." She studied him with the assessment of someone who'd seen countless men in his position. "Advice? Be yourself. If he doesn't like you for who you are, no amount of expensive fabric will change that. What if who I am isn't remotely good enough?" Rita smiled, pinning the hem. "Then she's with the wrong person. But something tells me that's not the case." Marcus picked up the suit on Friday, along with new shoes that made his feet hurt and a tie that Olivia had helped him select via FaceTime, a simple pattern that she swore was acceptable without being pretentious. That evening, she came to his flat for what she called preparation, and what Marcus suspected was actually making sure you don't accidentally insult my father within the first 30 seconds. "Okay," Olivia said, sitting on a sofa with a notebook that suggested this was going to be more complicated than he'd hoped. "Ground rules. Don't bring up politics, religion, or his competitors. Don't mention that article from 2019 where he called cryptocurrency digital snake oil, even though he was right. Don't ask about my mother unless he brings her up first. Don't breathe too loudly, don't blink in Morse code, don't exist too assertively," Marcus added. "Got it. I'm serious. He's going to try to rattle you. That's what he does. He'll ask questions designed to expose weakness or uncertainty. He'll probably bring up your finances, your career prospects, maybe even that poetry blog." Marcus winced. "The blog that I wrote when I was 16 and thought I understood the universe? That's the one. He'll use anything he can find. What's he looking for? What magical combination of words will convince him I'm not a disaster?" Olivia set down the notebook, her expression softening. "Honestly, I don't know if anything will convince him. He's already decided you're wrong for me. This dinner is just his way of proving it, to himself, to me, maybe even to you. So why am I going? Because I asked you to. Because I need you to meet him, even if he's determined to hate you. Because..." She paused, choosing words carefully. "Because if we're going to do this, build a life together, he needs to see that you're not intimidated by his money or his power. That you're here for me, not for what I represent." Marcus pulled her close, resting his chin on her head. "You know I'm terrified, right? Absolutely bricking it. I know. That's actually a good sign. It means you understand what's at stake." They spent the next hour role-playing potential conversations, with Olivia playing her father with unnerving accuracy. She deployed cutting questions about Marcus's 5-year plan. "Honestly? Try not to die and maybe expand a business, his views on wealth accumulation. I think people should have enough to be comfortable without hoarding like dragons, and his intentions toward her, to make her happy, which apparently is a controversial goal." "You can't say that," Olivia said after the last one. "Why not?" "It's true. Because it sounds naive. He'll eat you alive with that kind of earnestness. Then I'll be earnest and digested. At least I'll be honest." Olivia studied him for a long moment, then laughed, the kind of laugh that sounded close to crying. "You're either the bravest person I've ever met or the most foolish. Definitely the second one." but I'm brave enough to be foolish about you. Saturday arrived with the inevitability of a dental appointment. Marcus put on the new suit, which fit better than anything he'd ever worn but still felt like a costume. He stared at himself in the bathroom mirror, a 24-year-old tech repair worker about to have dinner with one of Britain's wealthiest men. His grandmother's umbrella leaned against the wall, and Marcus grabbed it on impulse. A talisman, maybe. A reminder of why he'd gotten into this situation in the first place, because kindness mattered, because seeing people mattered, because some things were worth being foolish about. Olivia had offered to send a car, but Marcus had refused. He'd take the tube to Hampstead like a normal person, even if he'd be arriving at an abnormal destination. The journey felt surreal, sitting on the Northern Line in a new suit, surrounded by people in football jerseys and shopping bags, all of them blissfully unaware that he was heading toward what could generously be called a trial. His phone buzzed. A text from his mother: "Good luck tonight, Achin. Papa would be proud of you. Remember, stand up straight, be respectful, but don't forget who you are." Another text, this one from Olivia: "Leaving now to meet you at the gate. I love you. Whatever happens in there, remember that." Marcus typed back, "I love you too. See you soon." The tube pulled into Hampstead Station, and Marcus stepped onto the platform. The evening air was cold and clear, stars barely visible above London's perpetual glow. Somewhere in the distance, behind gates and manicured lawns, Malcolm Thompson was waiting. Marcus adjusted his tie, gripped his grandmother's umbrella, and headed toward whatever came next. He'd faced broken motherboards and corrupted hard drives. How much harder could one billionaire father be? The answer, he suspected, was significantly harder. But he was going anyway. The Thompson estate looked even more intimidating in person than it had on Google Maps. The iron gates swung open silently as Marcus approached, operated by some invisible security system that had probably already scanned his retinas and judged his net worth. Olivia stood just inside, wearing a simple black dress that somehow managed to look both elegant and like armor. Her face brightened when she saw him, then flickered with concern. "You brought the umbrella," she said. "Seemed appropriate. It started this whole mess." She kissed him quickly, then took his hand. "Ready?" "Absolutely not. Let's go." The house loomed before them, all Georgian symmetry and old money, the kind of building that had witnessed centuries of dinner parties and probably some spectacular family drama. A butler, an actual butler, which Marcus had thought only existed in period dramas, opened the door with practiced neutrality. "Miss Thompson." "Mr. Chen." "Mr. Thompson is waiting in the dining room." The interior was exactly what Marcus expected and somehow worse, art that was probably worth more than his entire bloodline, furniture that looked too expensive to sit on, and a staircase that spiraled upward like something from a fairy tale. Everything whispered you don't belong here in the politest possible way. Malcolm Thompson stood as they entered the dining room, and Marcus's first thought was that the man looked exactly like his photographs, tall, silver-haired, with eyes that assessed everything with the cold precision of someone who'd spent decades making decisions worth billions. "Father," Olivia said, her voice carefully neutral. "This is Marcus Chen." "Mr. Thompson," Marcus said, extending his hand. "Thank you for having me." Malcolm's handshake was firm and brief, conveying both power and dismissal in a single gesture. "Mr. Chen. Please, sit." The dining table could have seated 20 but was set for 3, which somehow made it more intimidating. They sat, Olivia beside Marcus, Malcolm across from them like a judge at a tribunal. Dinner was served by silent staff who appeared and disappeared like ghosts. The food was exquisite and completely tasteless in Marcus's nervous mouth, some kind of fish with foam and microgreens that probably had a name he couldn't pronounce. "So, Mr. Chen," Malcolm began, his tone suggesting the interrogation had officially started. "Olivia tells me you repair computers." "Yes, sir. I own a small shop in Shoreditch. We handle everything from basic repairs to data recovery." "Modest enterprise." "Very modest. But honest work." "Honest." Malcolm savored the word like it was amusing. "And what are your projections for growth? Expansion plans? Surely you don't intend to repair phones indefinitely." "Actually, I'm hoping to expand into educational programs. Teaching basic repair skills to kids who can't afford new devices. Help them understand technology rather than just consume it." "Charity work, then?" "More like investment in the future, sir. These kids, they're brilliant. They just need access and opportunity." Malcolm's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. "Noble. And profitable, but noble." The conversation continued in this vein, Malcolm's questions surgical in their precision, each one designed to expose Marcus's inadequacies. His lack of university degree, dropped out after a year when his grandmother got sick. His modest income, enough to live on, nothing impressive. His family background, working class, unremarkable, nothing that would look good in a wedding announcement. Marcus answered honestly because he'd never learned to do otherwise, watching Malcolm catalog each response like evidence in a case he'd already decided. "Tell me, Mr. Chen," Malcolm said, setting down his wine glass with deliberate precision. "What exactly do you think you can offer my daughter? She has access to everything, the best education, unlimited resources, connections that most people would kill for. What do you bring to the equation besides, as you put it, honest work?" The question hung in the air, and Marcus felt Olivia's hand find his under the table, squeezing tight. This was it. The moment Malcolm had been building toward all evening. Marcus could play it safe. Apologize for his inadequacy. Grovel. Admit defeat. Instead, he thought about his grandmother, about the umbrella waiting in the entrance hall, about the woman beside him who'd chosen him despite every logical reason not to. "You're right, Mr. Thompson," Marcus said quietly. "I can't offer her money. I can't offer her connections or social status or a trust fund. I can't give her anything she doesn't already have." Malcolm's expression suggested victory. "Then why?" "But I can see her," Marcus continued, his voice steady. "Not as an asset to be managed or a piece on a corporate chessboard. Not as the Thompson heir or a photo opportunity. Just as Olivia. The woman who laughs at terrible pigeon jokes and cries during documentaries about ocean conservation. Who's brilliant at circuit repair and terrible at parallel parking. Who wants to be valued for who she is, not what she represents." He met Malcolm's gaze directly. "I don't deserve her." "Nobody could." But I love her, not for what she has, but for who she is. And I'll spend my life making sure she knows it. That's what I offer. That's all I have." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the staff seemed to have frozen in place. Malcolm stared at Marcus for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then, unexpectedly, something in his face shifted, not softening exactly, but cracking slightly, like ice beginning to thaw. "You remind me of someone," he said finally, his voice different now, less interrogator, more human. "My wife. Olivia's mother. She said something similar to my father when we wanted to marry. He thought I was too ambitious, too cold. She told him that she saw something in me worth believing in." He looked at Olivia, and for the first time that evening, Marcus saw actual emotion in Malcolm Thompson's face. "I see how you look at him. The same way she looked at me." "Dad," Olivia said softly. Malcolm stood abruptly. "This dinner is over. Mr. Chen, walk with me. What would you risk for love, comfort, security, or family approval? Share your thoughts below." Marcus followed Malcolm Thompson through French doors that opened onto a garden that seemed to defy London's urban reality. Manicure hedges bordered stone pathways, and strategic lighting illuminated perfectly maintained flower beds that probably required a team of horticulturists. Olivia had moved to follow, but Malcolm had held up a hand. "Just Mr. Chen and myself, please." She'd looked at Marcus with an expression that was equal parts apology and concern, but he'd nodded. Whatever this was, he needed to face it alone. They walked in silence for a moment, their footsteps crunching on gravel that was probably imported from somewhere ridiculously expensive. Malcolm's hands were clasped behind his back, his posture military straight despite his age. "Do you know what my biggest fear is, Mr. Chen?" Malcolm finally asked. "No, sir." "That Olivia will make the same mistakes I did. That she'll build a life based on transactions rather than connections. That she'll wake up one day surrounded by everything and realize she has nothing that matters." He stopped walking, turning to face Marcus. "My wife, Catherine, she understood something I spent decades learning. That wealth without humanity is just numbers on a screen." Marcus waited, sensing this wasn't a conversation that required immediate response. "When she died, Olivia was 15, Malcolm continued. I became terrified. Terrified of losing the only thing Catherine had left me. So I did what I do best, I tried to control everything. Her education, her social circle, her future. I convinced myself it was protection, but really it was fear. Mr. Thompson. Let me finish." Malcolm's voice was sharp but not unkind. "I had you investigated, as Olivia probably told you. Found nothing concerning, which somehow made me more suspicious. Nobody is that clean without hiding something. So I dug deeper, expecting to find the angle, the con, the reason you'd targeted my daughter." He pulled out his phone, scrolling to something, then handed it to Marcus. It was a video, security footage from the night they'd met. Marcus watched himself approach Olivia in the rain, offer the umbrella, his body language open and concerned. No calculation, no performance. Just a man helping someone who needed it. "I've watched this 20 times, Malcolm said quietly. "Looking for the moment where you recognized her, where you realized who she was. It never comes. You just saw someone in trouble and helped. Marcus handed back the phone. I didn't know who she was until a week ago, sir. Honestly, I'm still processing it. I believe you. That's what frightens me. I'm not sure I understand. Malcolm resumed walking, and Marcus fell into step beside him. My investigators found something else. Your grandmother, Papa, you called her, she used to volunteer at a community center. Taught English to immigrants, helped with citizenship applications, spent her pension on school supplies for children who couldn't afford them. She died with £3,000 in savings and a legacy of kindness that touched hundreds of lives. Marcus felt his throat tighten. She was the best person I ever knew. And you're trying to be like her. The repair shop that charges half what you should. The community repair events you run for free. The way you've been saving for 2 years to start that educational program you mentioned, pound 12,000 so far, according to your bank statements. Yes, I looked. Forgive me, but I needed to understand who was trying to marry my daughter. And what did you conclude? Marcus asked, keeping his voice level despite the invasion of privacy. That you're either the most elaborate con artist I've encountered, or you're exactly what you appear to be, a fundamentally decent person who had the extraordinarily bad judgment to fall in love with a billionaire's daughter. Definitely the second one, sir. For the first time that evening, Malcolm Thompson smiled, a small, genuine expression that transformed his entire face. Catherine would have liked you. She had a weakness for idealists with impractical dreams. They reached a bench overlooking the garden center, a fountain surrounded by roses that were somehow blooming despite the season. Malcolm sat, gesturing for Marcus to join him. I'm going to tell you something I've never told Olivia, Malcolm said. When Catherine and I met, I was 23, working 18-hour days on my first startup. She was a teacher making £22,000 a year. My business partners thought she'd be a distraction. Her family thought I was too ambitious, too cold. Everyone had an opinion about why we shouldn't work. But you did work. For 22 years, until cancer took her. Malcolm's voice cracked slightly. She made me better. Softer. More human. Without her, I became exactly what everyone feared I'd be, successful and empty. Marcus understood then what this was. Not rejection, but recognition. I don't want that for Olivia, Malcolm continued. I've been so focused on protecting her wealth, her position, that I forgot to protect her happiness. Her humanity. Mr. Thompson, I'm giving you my blessing, Malcolm interrupted. Not enthusiastically, mind you. I still think you're wildly unsuitable, and the prenuptial agreement will be thorough enough to qualify as literature. But I'm saying yes. Marcus felt the world tilt. Sir? Don't make me regret this, Chen. Malcolm stood, his businessman persona reasserting itself, but the warmth remained in his eyes. Love her properly. Challenge her. Keep her grounded. And for God's sake, let me fund that educational program of yours. Consider it a wedding gift. I can't accept. You can and you will. I've spent 30 years building wealth. Let me spend some of it on something that matters. He extended his hand. Welcome to the family. Conditionally. Probation ally. With extensive ongoing evaluation. Marcus shook his hand, then surprised them both by pulling Malcolm into a brief, awkward hug. Thank you, sir. I promise I won't. Disappoint me? Too late. You already did by being too good to hate. But Malcolm was smiling. Now let's go tell my daughter before she wears a hole in the carpet pacing. They walked back toward the house, where Olivia stood in the doorway, backlit and anxious. When she saw their faces, her expression transformed from worry to joy to disbelief. Dad? He'll do, Malcolm said gruffly. Barely. But he'll do it. 6 months later, Marcus stood in the same garden where Malcolm Thompson had given his blessing, except now it was transformed. White chairs arranged in neat rows faced an arch covered in roses, the kind of roses that definitely required a team of horticulturists and possibly a degree in floral engineering. His hands shook slightly as he adjusted his tie, not the charity shop version, but one Malcolm had insisted on buying, muttering something about representing the family now. The suit was new too, tailored perfectly, and Marcus still felt like he was wearing a costume. But Olivia had kissed him when she'd seen him in it, so he decided costumes had their place. You look like you're about to be sick, said a voice beside him. Marcus turned to find his mother, Helen Chen, resplendent in a deep blue dress that she'd bought specifically for today and had already declared was far too fancy for any reasonable occasion but perfect for an unreasonable one. I'm not going to be sick, Marcus said. Probably. Good, because your papa would haunt me if you ruin this moment with digestive drama. She straightened his collar unnecessarily, her eyes suspiciously bright. She'd be so proud of you, Achin. Not because you're marrying money, she'd probably scold you for that, actually, but because you found someone who makes you happy. Mom, don't make me cry before the ceremony. Too late. I'm your mother. Making you emotional is in my job description. She kissed his cheek. Now stand up straight and try not to faint when you see her. The guests had arrived over the past hour, an odd mixture of Marcus's modest circle and Olivia's extensive network. His repair shop employees sat beside tech industry CEOs. His university friends mingled with people whose net worth had multiple commas. It should have been awkward, but somehow it worked. Malcolm had insisted on a small ceremony, only 150 people, which apparently qualified as intimate in Thompson family terms. Marcus's version of small would have been about 20 people in a pub function room, but he'd learned to pick his battles. The string quartet began playing, and the guests quieted. Marcus's heart hammered against his ribs with enough force to qualify as percussion. Then he saw her. Olivia appeared at the garden's entrance on her father's arm, and Marcus forgot how to breathe. Her dress was simple, ivory silk that caught the afternoon light, no elaborate train or excessive embellishment. Just elegant simplicity that was somehow more stunning than any amount of extravagance could have been. But it was her face that destroyed him, radiant, nervous, completely real. No photo-ready mask, no practiced smile. Just Olivia, looking at him like he was the only person in the garden, in London, in the entire universe. Malcolm walked her down the aisle, his expression carefully neutral in the way that suggested he was fighting serious emotion. When they reached Marcus, he placed Olivia's hand in his, then leaned in close enough that only they could hear. Hurt her and I'll destroy you financially, socially, and possibly physically, Malcolm whispered. Understood, sir. Good man. Malcolm stepped back, his voice louder now. Take care of my daughter, Chen. Always. The ceremony was a blur. Marcus heard himself saying vows he'd written and rewritten 17 times, trying to capture everything he felt in words that wouldn't sound ridiculous. Olivia's vows were perfect, talking about umbrellas and rainstorms and finding home in unexpected places. When the officiant said, "You may kiss the bride," Marcus cupped Olivia's face and kissed her like they were alone, like the 150 witnesses had evaporated. She kissed him back, and somewhere in the distance, someone whistled, probably Jamie from the repair shop, whose sense of occasion had always been questionable. The reception was held in a tent that was more like a temporary palace, chandeliers, flowers everywhere, and food that Marcus's brain classified as definitely too fancy to eat comfortably. But Olivia had insisted on one thing: a corner table with fish and chips from Marcus's favorite place, wrapped in proper paper. For authenticity, she'd said when planning it. And because that's more than caviar and champagne. During the dinner, Malcolm stood to give a speech. The room quieted immediately. Malcolm Thompson didn't give speeches lightly. "I'm not good at this," he began, unusually uncomfortable. Catherine was the one who understood people, who knew what to say. "I just understand numbers and efficiency and quarterly projections. But she taught me something before she died, that the most valuable investments are the ones you make in people, not portfolios." He looked at Olivia, his expression soft. "My daughter has taught me the same lesson. She chose love over comfort, authenticity over appearance. She chose Marcus, who reminds me daily that wealth and worth aren't the same thing." Malcolm raised his glass. "Marcus, you're the most unsuitable son-in-law I could have imagined. You're impractical, idealistic, and far too trusting of humanity's better nature. You're also exactly what my daughter needs. Welcome to the family. Officially. With slightly less probationary status." The room erupted in laughter and applause. Later, as they danced to a song Olivia had chosen, "Something About Coming Home," Marcus whispered in her ear, "Can you believe we're here? 6 months ago, I was offering you an umbrella in the rain. Best decision you ever made. Second best. The best decision was saying yes when you proposed. That's very diplomatic of you." She rested her head on his shoulder. "I love you, Marcus Chen. I love you, Olivia Chen." He'd never get tired of saying it, her new name, chosen freely, worn proudly. "Chen," she repeated, testing it. Mrs. Olivia Chen, wife of a tech repair worker with impractical dreams. An occasional wedding guest. "I'm expanding my resume." She laughed, and they continued dancing as the sun set over the Thompson estate, turning the garden golden. Around them, two worlds that should never have merged had somehow become one, bound together by kindness, an umbrella, and the radical idea that love mattered more than logic. In the corner of the tent, on a small table that Olivia had insisted on, sat Marcus's grandmother's umbrella, battered green fabric, duck-head handle, completely out of place among the elegant decor. And absolutely perfect. 3 years later, Marcus stood in a converted warehouse in Shoreditch, watching 20 teenagers learn to repair laptops under the guidance of volunteer teachers. The Puppetchen Technology Education Center sign hung above the entrance, funded by Thompson Technologies but run independently. Olivia worked at a desk in the corner, managing the program's expansion to other communities. She'd left her position at her father's company, choosing instead to help build something that mattered. Malcolm visited weekly, ostensibly to review financial reports, but actually to help teach business skills to the students. He'd mellowed considerably, though he still terrified most people on principle. Marcus's phone buzzed with a text from Olivia. "Coffee break? I need to tell you something." He found her outside, a mysterious smile on her face. "What's up?" "I'm pregnant." Marcus's brain short-circuited completely. There's going to be a tiny human?" "In about 7 months, yes." He kissed her, overwhelmed by joy and terror in equal measure. "Your father's going to lose his mind." "Probably. But in a good way." "Mostly." She took his hand, placing it on her still flat stomach. "Think we can handle this?" Marcus thought about his grandmother, about kindness and umbrellas and the way small acts of decency could reshape entire lives. About how he'd offered help to a stranger in the rain and found everything he'd never known he needed. "Yeah," he said. "I think we can." And they did. Looking back, have you ever had a small act of kindness change your life's direction? Share your story in the comments. We'd love to hear how unexpected moments shaped your journey. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel to stay updated to every interesting stories we bring across your way. You may want to check out one of our interesting story rightly on your screen. Enjoy!